covering news where you live. This is 5 News at 5.
Elderly falls are the #1 reason people call 911, according to the Springdale Fire Department. We're going to show you how the department has teamed up with other companies to address keeping the elderly safe. And U.S. negotiators meeting with Ukrainian officials tomorrow in hopes to start ceasefire talks and land a peace deal. Thanks for joining us. I'm Darren Bobb. Chief Meteorologist Scott Covert out in Bentonville tonight. Scott's taking part in a storm spotter class there at NWAC. Thankfully, no severe weather to talk about, at least for the next couple of days.
At least for the next couple of days is exactly right. We've got a couple of storm systems in the 7-day forecast. We'll break all that down here in more detail in just a few minutes. I'll also tell you about how you at home can participate in this storm spotter class tonight. Or there's a couple more options before things wrap up later next week. Around the area, temperatures are nice and mild. Many of us in the 70s out there. It was unseasonably warm and no one's complaining about that. Low 70s remain the case into the next few hours. We'll see temperatures dropping down, but we don't get too cold overnight. Winds will stay breezy, skies will stay clear, and the reason for that is that area of high pressure situated in Texas. That's going to keep things nice and mild for the next couple of days. This evening, however, temperatures will fall into the 60s right around sunset tonight, which is 7:20 p.m. We'll drop into the 40s briefly by tomorrow morning. In the River Valley, we'll fall into the 60s probably around 8 o'clock tonight, also dipping into the upper 40s, some low 50s out there. What all are we tracking in that 7-day forecast? Well, it's going to get even warmer tomorrow. I think many of us very well could hit 80 degrees tomorrow afternoon. We'll track that. We'll track those 2 storm chances. That's all followed by a really nice weekend forecast. Those details here in just a few.
All right, Scott, thanks. New at 5, the Springdale Fire Department says elderly falls the #1 reason people call the emergency line. Falls are a huge health issue for adults 65 and older. 5 News reporter Rachel Williams joining us now. And Rachel, you've learned the department is partnering with some businesses to help keep older Arkansans safe.
Yeah, Darren, that's right. Today is day 1 of a partnership between the Springdale Fire Department, Black Hills Energy, and Lowe's. The fire department received a number of donated motion sensor lights to install in elderly people's homes, including Spring Meadows, a senior housing facility. The fire department says it has responded to a lot. They say the plan is whenever firefighters go out on medical fall-related calls, they have the motion sensor lights on hand to install in the person's home. Captain Pinkley says in 2024, the department saw more than 1,400 fall-related calls.
You break that down, you look at the numbers, you divide it by the days, that's right at 4 calls per day. This year, 2025, 287, you break that down by the number of days we've seen this year, we're right at a little over 4 calls per day. Break that down even more further, that's 1 call every 6 hours.
Today, the fire department installed more than 80 motion-sensitive lights, and next at 6, we'll hear how these new lights are already making elderly residents feel safe. Rachel Williams, 5 News.
All right, Rachel, thanks. We're also learning 3 people are facing capital murder charges after a man died in a shooting in Rogers over the weekend. Court documents show Jared Stiles, Amy Manduano, and Eileen Roca have all been charged with capital murder in connection with the death of Andres Fonseca. It happened early Saturday morning on South B Street on the east side of Rogers. Police say they got several calls about shots being fired there, and when they got there, they found Fonseca had been shot. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where he died from his injuries. Court documents show Roca brought her child to the scene of the shooting, where at least 32 total rounds were fired from 3 different guns. Moving over to Conway now, where 2 people arrested in connection to a large-scale retail theft operation spanning a number of states. Police have arrested 31-year-old Taylor Ferguson and 25-year-old Christina Ferguson. Conway police say the pair was involved in more than 120 theft incidents, stealing up to $500 per location. Those locations span across Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, and possibly other states. They now face 5 different charges related to being in possession of controlled substances. Investors reacting to President Trump's promise of tariffs and his comment over the weekend that he could not rule out the possibility of a recession. Markets tumbled today with uncertainty over potential trade wars sparked by the president's tariff threats, making investors very nervous. Trump administration says better days for the economy are coming.
I think that we're pretty close to having the uncertainty behind us, and as you know, when that happens, then the economy really lifts off.
President has paused some tariffs against Canada and Mexico while he's threatening taxes on Canadian dairy and lumber. Canada already striking back with the Ontario government, putting a 25% surcharge on electricity exports. Canadian leaders say it will impact about 1.5 million homes and businesses in Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, costing an estimated $400,000 every day. With storm season just beginning and damage to homes already happening, it raises concerns on how large a financial impact these new tariffs will have on roofing supplies and its customers.
I think there will be an impact from the tariffs.
Roofing customer Jared McMillan is not alone. It's a concern shared across the country, but he says he's not letting this stop him from paying for what he needs.
If the cost of my roof is going to increase due to these tariffs, then that is part of the cost of doing business. I personally don't think that these tariffs are just going to drastically increase prices overnight.
Owner of McCann's Roofing and Construction, Eric Brown, agrees.
We do forecasting, and so we look at that all the time. And as of right now, there's not been a huge shift.
But have some of Brown's customers expressed concerns over future price increases?
Oh, 100%. Everybody has concerns.
Brown says there's always concern when it comes to labor and materials.
As a business owner, I always have to look out for cost and, how I can help the customer the most. So that is a real issue.
According to the Tile Roofing Industry Alliance, there's unease over the 25% tariffs on roofing materials. Brown says, as a business owner, he factors in the impact on his customers.
There's everything from cedar that we use for our pergolas to Velux skylights. Those are manufactured here in the United States primarily.
Doctors treating Pope Francis said late today the pontiff's stable and no longer in imminent danger of death, but his physicians have decided to keep the 88-year-old in the hospital for at least several more days to continue treating his pneumonia. Last week, he issued his very first audio message to the faithful gathered at St. Peter's Square. They've been gathering on a nightly basis for more than 2 weeks now to pray for his recovery. Top U.S. negotiators will meet with Ukrainian leaders tomorrow in hopes of starting ceasefire talks. At the same time, Russia is increasing its airstrikes on Ukraine, launching a new wave of drone attacks overnight.
It's been 10 days since that explosive meeting between President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump in Washington. Following that, the U.S. suspended the delivery of military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine, both of those vital to this country's defense. Now, yesterday, Trump said that the pause on intelligence sharing had just about been lifted, but gave no further details. Meanwhile, diplomatic wheels are turning. Ahead of that meeting in Saudi Arabia tomorrow, a senior U.S. official says Ukraine wants to move forward. President Zelensky is visiting Saudi Arabia today. Here in Ukraine, though, there is deep anxiety about President Trump's upending of U.S. support 3 years after Vladimir Putin invaded this country. Last month, Trump inaccurately called Zelensky a dictator. In fact, one Ukrainian poll found that trust in Zelensky has soared to 68% here in Ukraine following his public dressing down at the White House. Zelensky stressed over the weekend that his country has always wanted peace. But the fear in Ukraine and in Europe is that Vladimir Putin could use a ceasefire to buy time and then invade again in the future. And to stop that happening, they want the US to contribute to security guarantees. Holly Williams, CBS News, Lviv, Ukraine.
President Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff said today the U.S. expects substantial progress in talks with Ukraine this week and hopes that a deal on critical minerals can be signed.